hello everybody, and welcome to the Abu, A Book of One's Own Facebook group. We're here on Friday, and it's our lunchtime learning session. So I hope you are all ready and waiting. And here we are with the wonderful Dayna Byfield. So hello, Dayna. It's great to have you here. Just briefly, Dayna is a life coach to business leaders and entrepreneurs. She's a specialist, an advisor, and a keynote speaker on the winning mindset, which is the topic of our discussion today, also well-being and performance. But Dayna, you weren't always an incredibly successful businesswoman, life coach. So just tell us your story, because it's absolutely fascinating and amazing how you got to where you are now.
Oh, thank you so much, Lucy. It's a pleasure to be here with the Abu family this morning. I know you've been excited. I've been super excited. I know we're going to have good energy and good vibes. So thank you for that lovely, lovely, lovely introduction. And you are quite right that I haven't always been a super successful businesswoman. Just to give you, and obviously anyone who's watching live, thank you so much for giving us your most precious resource, your time. We really do appreciate it. And anyone who is watching on the replay, we welcome you as well. We know you're going to have a fantastic experience, even though you weren't live with us today. So I had a pretty bumpy early start, to put it mildly. Unfortunately, my father was actually incarcerated when I was born. Between the ages of 6 and 13, I went to 7 different schools. And funnily enough, I didn't even realize that it had been so many schools until about 2 weeks ago, when I wrote them down on a list. I thought it was only 5. And that was for several different reasons that we don't really have time to go into this morning. Again, a lot of moving around, a lot of turbulence in terms of even just where I've lived in different places. I think I'm up to about 14 different residences. Wow. Between the ages of 18 and 25. Yeah, between the ages of 18 and 25, I'd lived in 7 different places. I had an incredible mother who found herself, unfortunately, single with children, looking after and growing up children in difficult socioeconomic circumstances. We experienced a lot of racism, a lot of prejudice where we were living, plus the day-to-day kind of pressures of life. The thing that I did have in spades, though, was I got the privilege to watch my mother kind of weave magic with not very much, as parents often do. And she was a fantastic, fantastic communicator. So I had the benefit of watching how she moved through the world. And having so much turbulence and being so up and down, when I got a little bit later on in my journey, I became, a mother at the age of 18, so a teenage mom. In my early 20s, I found myself in a horrendous situation for anyone who's ever experienced it, where my home got repossessed because I couldn't afford to keep it up. The bailiffs came, and I was standing on the lawn with all of my worldly possessions from my 2-bedroom home and my very, very young son at the time, and asking myself, terrifying. How did I... Yeah, definitely. Really asking myself, well, how did I get here? And the next thought was, history is repeating itself, right? And in that moment, I don't know how I knew, but I knew that was what we call fork in the road moment. That either I was going to continue to repeat history, or I was going to be responsible for writing a new history. And I chose the latter, with no money, no resources, no network, no connection, absolutely 0, 0, 0 of everything. But this belief that I could change it, and that it was going to start with me. And that's where my education really came into its own. They say that, formal education will make you a living. Personal development in education really makes a life worth living. And I started developing myself with absolutely nothing. And what I hit on was that it's actually about our thinking patterns, most of which are inherited. And actually, if we can change our mind and make those patterns positive, they can work with us as opposed to against us and for us, then we can change our lives.
That's an incredible, I mean, it's so impressive that you were able to think that in that moment. And it can't have been just one moment. It must have been, you know, quite a few hours, days, weeks after that, you know, horrendous event, that you actually had the presence of mind to kind of be calm enough to think that you were, you know, going to change things. Because I think most people would just have gone into panic.
Yes. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I was panicking. I was panicking. I was embarrassed. I was afraid. I was scared. All of those things. But regardless of my background and circumstances, there's always been something in me where I've had this belief that I can. Some of that definitely came from my mother, even though she was in difficult circumstances. And just a series of happenings in life. But I seemed to kind of take 10 steps forward at the time and then take kind of 12 steps back. That was kind of what was happening. So I had this belief, I'd move forward, but I'd end up moving backwards. So my job was really to find out how can we keep moving forwards and how can we keep any backward steps to a minimum.
Yeah.
And I remember one day kind of saying to myself, okay, well, if you want to do something, find someone that's done it already and copy them. But of course, I didn't have really anyone to copy. So I went and took myself to the local library. After we were rehoused for a short period of time, enough to be able to take my son to school on the bus. We had to walk there and back every day. So I went to the library, I started reading books, and I wanted to find out what do successful people do? And the recurring theme was that successful people, and at that time for me, it was about, a lot of it was about money and career. So I was looking for careers that I could transition into that would give me a better life experience. But what I stumbled across is that the wealthiest people generally own things and they don't work for other people.
Yeah. There's a question here. Whereabouts were you when this happened, Dayna, or did you move around?
So at the time I was in Edmonton in North London. That's where the home was repossessed.
Right.
And my son was attending a local school. We were within walking distance. I found myself in a hostel that was absolutely horrendous.
Gosh.
The local authority were very, very, very cross with me because they were trying to say that I had done some things that contributed towards my homelessness. Long, shortened story of that. And it was at that time that I, again, through networks and relationships, a friend of mine said to me, well, I've got a friend who owns a cleaning company. Would you be interested in some, cash in hand money cleaning? Yes. But the cleaning was like on the other side of London, and I had to get back to pick up my son. So what I thought was going to be a cleaning job that gave me a little bit of money, and it really was a little bit of money, actually turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I walked into these homes of people and I was like, I'd never been in the presence of people that live like this. So again, it just gave me another fire. So when I went to clean these homes, I was trying to piece together, well, what do they do without snooping and et cetera, but how does one get to this particular stage? So I took that experience, and then I took the money from the cleaning and I started to try and find some mentors who I could meet for a coffee, because I realized if you gave something, people would be more willing to meet with you. And that's where I really got my first tranche of mentorship. And then I I would learn from those occasions, and I'd earn a little bit more money, and then I'd keep people for coffee and a cake and then a lunch, because the more you fed people, the longer that they would stay with you. Yeah.
And how did you find your mentors? Who were they?
So I would literally, this was online, friend of a friend, do you know anyone that has a business? Do you know anyone that has a professional career? And it was literally piecing together people. And people have always been my fascination, my love, my connection to the world. And the thing that has gotten me everything I want has always come through other people and connections and leveraging. And that's where I started. Free library, cleaning, being inspired by being in these people's homes, and then following along the lines of financial education, literacy, business, starting up businesses, most of them failing horrendously in the beginning because I had no idea what I was doing, but I was working on my mind and working on my spirituality as a person. And then I realized that there were certain things I was doing that I didn't realize, for example, and the way as I was being, that people who are elite athletes, people who are in the special forces, the way they were thinking, I was doing similar things without knowing. So then I started to study. So how is it that Olympians get that mindset? And my mum was big into sport. She was huge into sport. We watched Formula One, basketball, athletics, tennis.
Wow.
But again, I was soaking up all of these things unbeknownst to me through the TV as a child, right? And listening to elite athletes and people in, special forces, people who are mission critical focused and who build a life and an itinerary and a bulletproof mind. And then I realized, hang on, I'm doing some of those things. Let me do more and more and more. And then having faced lots and lots and lots of knockbacks, I then started to put frameworks and formulas of thinking together and understanding that if you cultivate a winning mind, it really is either your superpower or it's going to be your kryptonite. And I decided I wanted to make that my superpower.
Fantastic. Yeah, Nicola says the desire is amazing.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Nicola.
So Dayna, what was the first business? What were your first few businesses that you started and that failed? Where did you take your very first business step?
Yeah, so my first business steps were into fashion and surprise, into coaching. So I found an amazing brand that created and sourced ethical kind of bags and accessories in Mauritania. And I partnered with them to bring those accessories to the UK and kind of literally sell them at Sunday, boot market, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And that's where I started to think about, profit margin, how to market, how to sell, what works, what doesn't work. And that was successful for a time. And I kind of got a little bit bored of that. And I couldn't see how to scale it from past where I was, because to get a retail outlet, that was expensive, et cetera, et cetera. I had a cleaning business for a little while as well because of the cleaning. And I started the Achievement Coaching Partnership Organization, again, with this kind of dream of coaching people into the best version of themselves, but still lacking in the business side, so that not really working. At the last count, I've probably started somewhere in the region of about 11 or 12 businesses. Wow. Of different kinds. Most of them completely unsuccessful. However, each incarnation, I learned things that I was able to then take into the next. So I'm not fearful of failure. I always say one of the things that I just don't like about industrialized education systems is how we are hardwired, how we are culturalized and socialized about when we fail.
Yeah,
the school is about getting it right, and then we get out into the real world, and actually you have to try a bunch of different things and kind of you'll work it out. And failure is definitely part of that because of the lessons that you learn.
Yeah, no, that's so true. If you don't fail, you don't go anywhere, really, do you? I mean, it's I don't know anybody who's just started a business and just succeeded and that's been it. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I think one of the beautiful things about being on the internet and social media, we're so hyper connected, but I also think it gives us a disproportionate view of the real reality. The Zuckerbergs, the Jobs of the world are so rare, but because we now have this access in a way we never would have had before, it gives us expectations that we should be doing this thing by this time. And then we run with that falsity, as opposed to what real education is. And the root of the word education is actually educare from Latin, which is to bring out what is within.
Yeah.
So what works, for Zach and Co. may not work for us. And success is a function of what is going to bring you the most peace, not what somebody else is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Lots of people agreeing with you here, Dayna. So how many steps, did it take? Not necessarily number of businesses, but how many steps did it take you to get to the business and the place you're in now?
Gosh, that's a $64 million question. I always say that I'm a journeyer, I'm a navigator, and I'm always in process. One of the things that I've taught myself is to really practice gratitude. We're so fast, we're so quick, we're so in the process of moving that we forget that we are experiencing what we prayed for. We really are. And lack of that time for us to reflect causes us to be in an unpeaceful space because we're always moving forward. I would say sometimes it's when the challenges come that I realize just how far I've come. So unfortunately, my mother-in-law passed away last year in March, and that was really, 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 really tough. My husband is an only child. So watching him go through that process of, grieving for his mother and all of the things that anyone who's had someone close to them pass away has to deal with, and pretty much dealing with that on his own. It was the two of us. Absolutely horrendous. And that's one of the things that led us about thinking to leave the country full time. I'm talking about the UK.
Yeah.
One of the things though that was incredible about that experience is watching him go through this process of deciding what to keep, deciding what went to charity, deciding, what would go in the bin, absolutely gave me the permission to just detach from all emotional connection with material things.
Wow.
Because I just thought, gosh, one day somebody is going to be deciding what goes to charity, what gets kept, what's going to go in the bin. And I'm not particularly, materialistic person. Personally, I don't think anything wrong with materialism. If people work for what they have and they're doing moral, legal, and ethical things, go for it. I'll take a spin in the Bugatti with you any day of the week for anyone that wants to offer. But there's something about that detachment process. It's kind of a bit like, when we see rocket ships go up and then they actually detach when they get into the atmosphere and the weight just leaves.
Yeah, that's a really great analogy.
Yeah, it's the rocket ship that's now in orbit. And that just expanded my mind to a different level where I was like, we don't actually need to be here full time. And I spoke to my husband, and he's the sensible one out of the two of us, right? He's the one that dots all the I's, crosses all the T's. What about this? What are the steps? What are we going to do? And I'm the kind of big vision, right? This is what we're going to do, and then plot some of the steps towards it, so we make a fantastic pair.
Yes.
And I just said, let's just book the ticket. Once you book the plane ticket, once you take the first step, you've made a commitment. Right? Once you decide, and again, I'm big on language, big on words. Decide comes with similar words like homicide, pesticide, suicide. That is it. And oftentimes we are not committed to make a decision. And then we try and live in what I call limbo land, where we want one thing, we're upset about the status quo. We don't quite ever decide either way, because you can be it or not and make peace with that particular decisions. So all of these life experiences and incarnations of myself and the people kind of around me have informed what I do in terms of my work, my practice, and my love, which is really about well-being, performance, and that winning mind, and not just winning to amass things, but real winners are people that have peace and clarity and space. And they go on to amass great things because those things are byproducts of who we are, not the focus.
That's, yeah, no, that's amazing. So how do you now, I mean, you obviously had a winning mindset from very early on, or you wouldn't have been able to overcome all the difficulties that you had. But how do you now coach other people? Do you have a process? Are there steps you have to go through? How do you coach other people to have that winning mind?
100%. So we have a number of different programs with their each unique methodologies, formula, and steps. But taking it away from that, the foundation really is all of us are elite performers in one or more areas already. The challenge is we operate in silos and we have the inability to pull out the excellence and the elite mind and attitude and being in one area and simply transfer it to another.
Oh, that's an interesting. So I mean, give us an example. Have you got an example of somebody you've worked with who was brilliant at one thing but not so good at something else?
100%. So I had a client who, fantastic dressmaker, seamstress. You know, anything you said, I want this dress. You would go to, and she would take what your vision is and just take it to the next level.
Wow.
Right. And you could never have imagined what she was able to conceive, right? So she's got this elite mind when it comes to, I'm gonna take this thing that someone's given me some, rough guidance about, I'm gonna pair that with their vision, sprinkle my secret sauce, and then we're gonna come out with something amazing. I couldn't think of anything that was more of an elite mindset than that.
Yeah, really specialist.
Come to me, exactly, incredibly talented. She can do every part of the process that needs to be done, right? Right the way from making her own patterns, cutting, sewing, sourcing materials, the creative design, everything. Okay, so come to me and said, oh, well, I have some problems in my business. I need it to grow. Because I started out as a purely personal development coach, transitioned to a business growth strategist, and now have transitioned into looking at mindset, well-being, and performance. Because what kept happening was people were coming to me with, oh, I need to do this in my business. Can you help me to help my business grow? Great. We'd sit down, and usually within about half an hour, it's nothing to do with the business. It's all about what's going on up here and what's going on in here. Right? So now studying this, because I love to study. I'm a student of the human mind, body, psychology, emotions, anything to do with people. Typically, we are trapped within the confines of the experience that we had between the ages of 0 and 7, when our brain was in the theta state, which simply means, for anyone who's not familiar, it accepts what it receives.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that environment that we are fertilized and that we are seasoned in is so fundamental to who we still are now, because that's how the human race has survived. So we have literally zero ability at that time to use any kind of logical thinking. We're just taking it all in.
Right.
Which makes sense. You have to learn how to walk, how to talk, how to eat, how to function and live and grow and survive in your environment. So having studied all of this, invariably when people are coming to me and saying, oh, there's an issue in the business, it was always something generally that was pointing back to them. So you've got the overachievers, for example, who think themselves to death, who want to perfect everything to death, because somewhere in their very early years, they got the message that A, this was the only way to be, because you were now acceptable as an overachiever, or this was a survival mechanism. So I found myself now working on the personal stuff that I used to work on, that I came away from, because as soon as we unlocked that, this particular lady, within 4 weeks, she had 7x'd her business. And within 12 weeks, she 12x'd her business. that wasn't the goal when she came to me. It was about systems and, you know, getting away from owner reliance. But every single time it would happen. It doesn't matter whether it's you or whether you've got, I had a client once that had 150 employees, refused to let the team get on with the work that he had hired them for, micromanaging everything. So of course, the morale in that organization was at a low. Again, because we're going back to childhood, this person had a lot of responsibility that no child at that age should have. And often what I find is that high performance is a byproduct of trauma.
Oh, right. Right. Oh, right. That's really interesting. Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
High performance is very, and because we in society, we deify high performance, right?
Yeah.
That's why so many people who we celebrate and who are accomplished are dreadfully unhappy, you know, depressed, suicidal, all those things. Because everyone's like, you're so great. They've got no space to say, I need help, I'm failing. And that's one of the things that I learned through studying human psychology and behavior. What is the in thing in society? We deify. And those people are some of the most damaged, traumatized, in need of help, in need of support, running themselves down to the ground.
Wow.
But because they are the one that has to kind of keep it all together, because it's the sexy thing like business, you know, 40 or 50 years ago, you're a failure if you had a business 40 or 50 years ago because you were seen as unemployable, generally. Now it's the in thing. Entrepreneurs have some of the worst rates of mental health, right? Because everyone's like, oh, you're successful. You've got it together. You've got money. You've got fame. You've got clout. You can go to Saint-Tropez whenever you feel like it. None of those things will replace the absence of peace. And where we don't have peace, we create disease.
Wow.
And a lot of women create disease because we are so busy trying to save everybody else when the person that needs to be at the top of the priority list is ourselves.
Oh, so gosh, I'm sure that rings true with a lot of us.
Exactly. So circling back to the question about how do I work with clients, the foundation is you are already an elite performer somewhere already. So we're going to start with that in mind as a foundation, because that's easier for your mind to work with, right? I'm already a high performer here, even if I haven't identified that. Once we do the diagnostic, we look at the areas where you have high performance. All we're now doing is simply, she says, simple but not easy, transferring your elite mindset in that area and unlocking that so you can transfer it into the other areas that you want to be a high performer in. Wow. And a lot of it's very counterintuitive, the way that I work, the way we work as a team. A lot of this starts with rest and reflection in various different guises, eking out. So saying to organizations, you know, where can you allow your people to have some downtime, some free thinking and space? Because all the research tells us, and we all know, we get the best ideas once we've just had a break.
Yes, no, that's absolutely true, completely. And I just want to say to you, Dayna, that Nicola has just said the world needs to hear this. And dare I say it, it is great to hear Black women using their voice in such a positive way. And she says, and may I add, having the space to speak from the heart. And Precious says, bring it, queens. So yeah, you're resonating here.
Thank you so much. And Nicola is another amazing lady who I have no doubt that some of the women in the group are going to be connecting with. And Nicola is one of my secret superpowers who's on my team, who's my publicist. And go and check out her company, FP Comms and the Fire PR Club. And she is someone who lives an ethical life, speaks an ethical life into other people, has an amazing business and has given me the space to expand. And we are on the road with Nicola's support to spreading this message worldwide.
Fantastic. That's amazing. So just going back to your dressmaker, obviously more than that client. So that was her elite, her elite skill set was in that area. How
Yeah.
did you transfer that to what other areas did you manage to move her skill set into?
Yeah, the first thing that we all need a healthy dose of, doesn't matter who we are, is transferring our elite mindset into how we view ourselves.
Right.
And to crank up the belief and confidence that we have in ourselves, right? That's like your nitro, okay? I don't know if anyone's ever watched kind of Fast and the Furious, and at some point they crank out the nitro and that car goes zoom. Because when you have a healthy foundation in terms of how you see yourself as an individual, right? And what I call your community self-esteem, the group that you belong to, okay? Then we've just unlocked your mind. The mind works best like a parachute when it's open. So that's the very, very, very first thing that we do. But unlocking your self-esteem and how you see yourself. And that can be done quite quickly. It's whether or not we're going to resist. And I always say resistance causes suffering. And that's why many of us are not necessarily at the apex of where we would like to be. There's something we're resisting. And one of the best examples of that I can use is when someone passes away, of course, the grief. But grief is really resistance to the new norm and the new reality that this person is no longer with us in the flesh is what we are trying to resist against. And the longer that resistance pervades, and it's, of course, entirely appropriate, the longer the initial stages of grief take for us to move through. And in life, there are things that we all consciously know. If I stopped doing this, I'd move forward. If I started doing this, I'd move forward. But we're resisting somewhere in the middle. So we live in what I call limbo land, where we're not doing the thing that we need to move forward, and we're not accepting and making peace with the fact that we're not doing it. But that particular client has gone on to found another business that is incredibly in keeping with their being and who they are as an individual and some of the passions that they have had. The financial spoke for itself, unlocked the revenue capability of that business to 12 exit without really fundamentally changing much. But the biggest thing was her testimonial, and she said, Dayna unlocked something in me and I'm now just able to fly. And that's the thing that made me most proud more than anything, because that transfers to everywhere in life. And wherever we're seeking success, usually what we're focusing on is a byproduct of who we are as individuals. We're human beings, not human doings. We spend so much time being funneled and cultured and pressured into doing. When we give ourselves the space to be, however, we all know when we've had a break, when we've had a rest, when we feel refreshed, the psychology of the mind is such where you need to decompress if you want the mind to do its thing, right? The decompression is necessary. Constant decompression. People that have space to think, to feel, to be, can actualize. So if you're worried about food, shelter, and water, there can't be an actualization. If we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the self-actualization comes when we have the mental, the physical, and the psychosocial space to be. Then we can get to all the goodies and all of the good stuff. So that's kind of the starting point and some of the outcomes.
Amazing. So would you say that one of your superpowers is actually showing people where they're blocked, or is it more about allowing them the space to think about it and identify those blocks themselves?
It's more about allowing them the space to identify their blocks, right? Because if I tell you, right, the positioning is from me to you. Yeah. Right? If I guide you down your own path and allow you to look at all the roses and all of the thorns, you take ownership of that. I always say when I work with anyone, organizations, teams, my job is not to teach you how to think. My job is to show you frameworks that are going to allow you to think and use your mind in a way that is in line with your elite self.
Right, right. And that's how you kind of unlock other people's superpowers.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, that has to come within a structure and framework, of course. It has to be in a step-by-step process, and we do that. But the framework is about allowing you to have that space to unlock. And then every now and then, like everything, you know, I'm not a purist coach. Sometimes people need a little bit of a kick up, you know, the backside. Sometimes you get into advisor mode, sometimes you're in strategist mode. But I like I like the coaching space, because it's really about, well, you already have the answers. I'm supporting you to elicit the answers. So when you're like, oh, you know, my team they're not performing, etc., etc. That's, well, of course you know that, because that's why you've come to me, right? But you also are acutely aware of what hasn't worked, what works. Sometimes it's just courage. Like I always say, courage is not about not being fearful. That is not what courage is about. Courage is about being scared as hell, excuse my language, but still going for it anyway. And that, in my mind, and it's not necessarily a popular opinion, accounts for the many gaps between various different groups of people to an extent. So men and women, for example, we look at the gender pay gap. I cannot tell you how many times I've thrown my hands up to the ceiling when I'm seeing what women are charging. It's ridiculous.
What, charging too little?
Charging way too little for the result that the other person or the other people are going to get.
Right.
I will name no names whatsoever. I've been in the ABU group now for a couple of weeks, and obviously I'm, you know, looking at people's things. Oh my God, that's great. That's amazing, amazing. And there was one person's website that I went onto, and I was like, wow, this is phenomenal, whatever, whatever. And I looked at the price of one of their products, and I was like, I want to wring your neck. Because from what I can see, I'm thinking the value that someone's going to get from the result they're going to get from working with you, how that's going to exponentially change their life, and you're only charging X, Y, and Z. And there are some people that are repelled when the price and what they think they're going to get don't line up. So we think we're doing a great job by lowballing, but that can put doubt in someone's mind. It's kind of like too good to be true. So I believe a lot of the gender wage gap between men and women, of course, we know that the discrimination is there, and that's very real, and I would never argue that. However, a man will look at a work application, for example, and there'll be 10 points, and he'll hit 2 of them, and he'll be like, yeah, I'm going to apply. A woman will have 8 of the 10 points and not have the other 2 and say, I'm not going to apply. A man will go to the table, full negotiation mode, right? And we take these things from our working history, because most of us did not start out life as an entrepreneur. We worked for other people, and then we transitioned into business. We're taking our work employee mind into business and pricing based on the hour, or pricing based on what we think someone's going to pay for it, not the result that they're going to get and the transformation that it's going to cause. And it takes courage to potentially make the mistake of pricing incorrectly. But I will tell you, every day of the week, it's better you price too high, right? And then you come down, rather than you lowball yourself. Because the same person's telling you that's too expensive, it's going to go down the road and buy something else that's even higher priced than that. And you're worth it and you deserve it. So be courageous. So we see how everything trickles back to the mind, right? What you price, what you earn, the circumstances that you live within, the partner that you choose, how you raise your children, how you allow people to treat you, all tracks back to the mind. So the winning mindset really is our secret superpower. And I just enjoy being able to help people create in that space to enhance their overall well-being, including their business growth outcomes for themselves and their organizations.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant, Dayna. Thank you so much for that. I mean, I'm sure we've all had a huge amount of insight there. And just that last one about valuing yourself and charging what you are worth rather than what you think people might pay or might not pay, is just absolute gold. So
Yeah.
if people want to get in touch with you to work with you or find out more about what you do, where is the best place for them to head to?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much. In terms of connecting with me, folks can connect with me on LinkedIn, first name, last name, Dayna, Byfield, Dayna Byfield. Also on Instagram and Facebook. I think there will be a couple of links underneath this video.
Yeah.
It's obviously been uploaded. There are a couple of links to if anyone would like to book me to speak there. Anyone who may be interested in any of our programs as well, please fill in both of those forms, because then you will get direct information into your inbox in terms of how we can partner and work together. And then there'll be a Linktree link there as well with all of the connection points that we've spoken about.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Dayna. I mean, your story is amazing, and yeah, what you do and how you do it, and your whole kind of ethos is absolutely incredible. So thank you so much for spending time with us today and giving us your valuable insights. Really appreciate it. And we will put all those links in the comments, and I'm sure people will be in touch with you. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your comments. I'm sure Dayna will go back and have a look at them. And Dayna, thank you again so much, and talk to you soon.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.